Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon, everyone. And we're really excited to have you here on our live Path to Profit event that we host every month. We are going to be talking today about optimizing omni-channel strategies for maximizing reach and profitability. But for everyone who are here, I want to say thank you so much for taking your time and being here with us. Do please send your questions in the comments below. We will definitely be able to address them on the call. And whatever we're not able to address, we will definitely address it after the call as well. If you are listening to this recording post the live event happen, not a problem. We're really excited for you to be part of it as well. Please do. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to comment and we will respond to every single one of you. But to just start off, let me introduce myself. My name is Evgenia Alexandrovna Yushkova, or simply Yay. And I'm really thrilled to be here every month talking about different pressing topics that are needed for our industry to discuss so that we could find great ideas of how to help our businesses grow and flourish, and for some of us, build from ground up. For those who really don't know me yet, I am a fashion business consultant and I own a fashion boutique business consultancy called Yay Designs. And we've built and scaled dozens of multi-million-dollar brands, both in retail and manufacturing side. My specialty is optimizing private label, merchandising, and end-to-end process improvement for profitability. Our goal is to find out where profit leaks are and build a system and foundation to maximize your profitability. And that's exactly what really drives me to the topic today. Omni-channel strategies to maximize reach for profitability is a hot topic for a lot of us, and constantly thinking about what can we do to be profitable, not just at the product margin, but at the bottom line. Because let's be honest, most omni-channel strategies in fashion today, they are bleeding profitability at the bottom line under the looking of under microscope. If we look at different operations and potentially some of the assortments and of the way the logistics are set up and supply chain, we actually can uncover a lot of different pieces where it could be optimized and help us to increase our profitability. It's really thinking about when we create omni-channel, it often looks like as an really extensive patchwork of disconnect systems. They look at fine of really representations from each of the channels and thinking about how do we putting them all together. And often they are done strategy by strategy, channel by channel. And really often we don't have the time to actually step back and look at holistic approach of the holistic process to see how everything is actually connects and where the optimization could potentially happen. And really behind the scenes, there are bleeding profit and confusing teams and often frustrating the customers. If that sounds familiar, stay on and let's continue diving into this discussion today. We'll today also going to also pull back and look at this behind the curtain. And my goal is really to be able to give you some future of retail trends and give you some ideas of what you can implement in your business today. I'm here to share practical, proven, and often overlooked strategies can implement immediately to transform your channel strategy into profit engine. Today, I want to first start off by having a conversation with you about channel evaluation and knowing where the profit really lives. And really, this starts by thinking about the foundation of your sales channels. Most executives within our space I work with are assume that more channels equals more growth. Let's add D2C. Let's launch Amazon. Let's push into wholesale. Let's TikTok shop. And everybody wants to do everything at once. But what they think can actually be dangerous trap is that's where we need to identify, figure it out, which channel makes sense to actually go forward with and pay attention to, and which channel potentially you might want to drop because it is actually taking away your resources and driving your profitability down. And really, here is the truth that not all channels are created equal. D2C wholesale and marketplaces don't just perform differently, they cost you differently too. And unless you're tracking profitability at the channel specific P&L level, you are making blind bets. And smaller businesses today who often come to us surprisingly still working off of one P&L that is comprehensive to all channels together, instead of breaking it apart on channel by channel and seeing where exactly the profitability and potentially the profit leaks are actually exists. What I see more often, where brands lump costs together and look at top revenue. They all say wholesale is killing it and Amazon is booming. But when we peel back the layers, what's missing is really really unforeseen how we can find a margin. And looking at different margin analysis, we are finding that wholesale potentially is actually not killing it, and Amazon is actually draining your profitability down. Forensic margin analysis that we often perform in these cases really become a game changer. It's not just enough to look at the gross revenue. You really need to break it down to true condition margin, which means factoring in fulfillment costs unique to each channel, returns and reverse logistics, chargebacks, discounts, and markdowns, channel specific marketing and commissions. This is where we often also see the difference of which channel needs how much marketing behind. So we need to also factor in there's different commission rates that we pay, whether to a sales rep or whether to a particular channels. When you do this, the picture changes fast. More often than not, the fast growing channels turns into the silent margin killers. And really, when we in this case advise is to look at direct to consumer channels as you're really fantastic for collecting customer data and building loyalty and controlling your story brand. So if this is your primary goal for this year or for the next year to come, then yes, maybe the direct to consumer website, particularly directly website channel sales, are the things you want to focus. But what we also don't often talk about, that it is expensive, if your CAA isn't just tightly controlled, right? It also, with rising ad costs, can also bleed profit chasing volume here. The brands that win, they're the ones that shift focus from endless acquisition to retention and repeat purchase rates. Now, if we look at the wholesale and whether it's right channel for you, we have to understand that wholesale really gives us a stability, but it's a much thinner margin. It can still be highly profitable if you negotiate chargeback protection, push for POS visibility, and optimize the replenishment models to reduce returns. Wholesale can be also a cash flow hero. So if that is what you're trying to improve within the next year to come, that might be an opportunity where you want to expand. When structured correctly, but it can just also be easily draining margin if you accept standard terms. The other thing to consider when we are discussing wholesale is private label. Often brands come to us and say, we want to build private label. And when I ask them, what does that really mean to you? They say, we want to go to retailers and produce product for them. Now, my biggest question will always be asked, number one, are you actually a direct manufacturer and own host factory? If the answer is no, that is definitely potentially might not be the route that you want to go in, because your margins will be even much more thinner than if you would be doing a wholesale selling of your own brand. And often the wholesale and private label really goes back hand to hand. So it's very difficult to just separate and say, let's go after just wholesale, because you will be picking up dust and you are not going to be actually doing meaningful business growth for yourself. But if you start to look at it holistically, that your wholesale opportunity is actually opening up the doors to larger retailers to also potentially do some private label programs in addition to your wholesale, that's a game changer. So thinking about those aspects as we're starting to think and evaluate your wholesale programs is very critical. Looking at marketplaces like Amazon, like Tmall, Zalando as an example, marketplaces really bring us volume and exposure, but only if your logistics and commission structures is airtight. If your returns exceeds 20%, if you're not really monitoring conditions, margins after fees, Amazon can look like a growth story while secretly really taking out and bleeding your margins and your profitability at the bottom line. So Amazon is a fantastic place to go if you are trying to get new customers, if you are trying to create a better exposure and a faster exposure to your brand. But it has to be done strategically and it has to be done in the right time. Here's the strategy that I don't see enough for us to often test with the clients that we have. And we tend to often help them to really stress that channel stress testing is going to be one of the most important things that will help you to identify which channels that you really should be focusing on. So what does the channel stress testing really means? It really means about model scenarios. Like, what happens if I cut marketing volume by 20%, but double my direct to consumer retention rate? What will happen with my business at that time? Or what if I scale my wholesale, but two strategies partners, but exit smaller, unprofitable accounts? That potentially could give you some really great answers to think about how to optimize the channels that you currently have. And what if I reduce my direct to consumer ad spend by half and really reinvest that into a marketing space where that gives us the much stronger ROS in really helps us to drive stronger return on investment, but allows us to then maximize the reach and exposure to our brand. You'd be surprised how often growth is hidden in simplification, not expansion. Too many clients that come to us chase the next shiny channel when the reality is really optimizing the mix that they already have yields the bigger lift. Your channel's evaluation is not static. The profitability of channel changes quarter to quarter based on customer behavior and market shifts, even logistics costs. If you are not rerunning these numbers every 90 days, you are making decisions based on outdated assumptions. So I'd like to also now answer a couple of the questions that are coming in. And thank you, by the way, for everyone who are sending questions in and being participating live in this. It really helps us to make it as collaborative as we possibly can. And at the same time allows us to think about other pressing thoughts that are pressing issues that we're having with potentially out there in the industry and helping you answer them and execute on them. John, thank you so much for sending this. Yay. What is the very first thing I should look at to know if the channel is actually profitable? It's a really great question, John. Thank you for asking it. And this really the first thing I recommend is stripping away really the vanity metrics and forget gross revenue or door count and really start to contribution margin per unit sold per channel. What that means really the revenue, minus all variable costs tied specifically to that channel. Once you do that, you will often see the complete different picture. And sometimes your best look revenue line is actually your worst profit drain. So we found that you really potentially operating blind. So that is number one thing that I would suggest to do. Thank you for thumbs up. I'm glad that this was helpful. I'd like to also really talk about is where the strategic partnerships in scaling without the friction lays. Really, in thinking about partnership, what does it really mean? Most brands treat partnerships like a checkbox. I've landed a Nordstrom.com account, so we are all set, right? Or we got a wholesale account with a major retail. Well, we did a great job. Well done, and everybody's applauding. But here's the reality that most partnership actually drain most resources that they actually return unless you negotiate them with a really precise precision to ensure that you are playing safe in the sandbox with those big players. The problem is that retailers, marketplaces, and even distribution partners are optimizing for their own margin, not yours. If you walk into the deal without a strategy, you end up carrying their risk, covering their compliance costs, and sending your marketing budget to really subsidizing to their traffic. That's why so many clients that we have looked back a year later and realized that the partnership looked good on paper, but it really eroded the profitability. So let's really flip the script here, right? And here's the insider's playbook for building partnerships that scale without draining your team. First is to reverse engineer the retailer pain points. Most brands lead with their brand story. We are sustainable, we are innovative, we are premium. That's fine, but it's not that it gets you the leverage in negotiating table. What retailers really care is the sell through. Their biggest fear is tying up their open to buy dollars in product that does not move. So instead of leading with here's who we are, lead with here's how we de-risk your floor. Here's this product or SKUs that we have tested in our other channels, and we know that this product will sell through and will be blown out. This is what they want to hear. This is how you are able to win some of those accounts as well. When you show that your brand can really deliver the consistent turns, you instantly move from a vendor to a strategic partner. Bring them the data, bring them the sales data from your other channels. If you can show channel velocity, return rates, or even social proof that demonstrates demand, you are no longer negotiating the place of hope. You're really solving the biggest pain point before they even asked you. Negotiating marketing support upfront is another important strategy when you are thinking about going out there with the retailers. This is one of the most common mistakes that we see with the clients that come to us. Too many brands accept placement only. They get onto the retail site or a small rack and store and they hope that it will organically boost sales. But the reality is, if you need visibility to drive velocity, and that means marketing support, what should it really be asking for? You're thinking about the co-funded campaigns as a digital, email, or even social cross promotions, data visibility, real-time POS data, or dashboards that can let you see sell-through without waiting for the end month reports that potentially could also be tied in with your demand planning and your if you have working on an agile supply chain. This could be a game changer of how you're going to be able to replenish those orders and turn them much quicker. Merchandising support, thinking about featuring placement in bundle promotions and seasonal showcasing of how your merchandise is actually going to be presented to in their store, in their websites, so that you have the spotlight, so you have the higher chance to succeed within that space. And really thinking about that, it's not just about really negotiation, right? But in many cases, retail actually are expect you to ask them those type of questions, or expect you to try to negotiate those particular terms. And if you don't, they assume that you're really unexperienced and you will be happily to carry on all of their costs. And they will try to take advantage of that. So hopefully this really starts to help to clarify of the different ways that you can pivot even when you are pitching to your product to those stores. And really set clear exit clause. Retailers overpromise all the time. We'll give you 50 stores. We'll push you in a homepage. We'll be a part of your summer campaign. And then half of it does not happen. Well, what's why you really thinking about, why you need this exit clause built into your agreements is about to protecting your resources and your reputation. Because if those things don't happen and you are not selling the product the way that you were expecting, if those things would have happened, again, that goes back to the reputation of your brand performance. And retailers do look at other retailers and seeing you where you are in a space. I always say, as medium-sized fish will look at the small-sized fish and see how they do before they're going to want to bring you on. And the large-sized fish will look at the medium-sized fish before they will bring you on as well. So thinking about the chain of reaction and strategically placing your product in the stores that not only help you to build your brand equity and be able to tell your story with the right customer, but as well as be able to open up those other doors that are potentially not available to you right now because of your sheer size. Performance thresholds, if sales really targets aren't met or on their end, you can reduce commitments. The other opportunity that you can put in is exclusivity limits. Don't let them box you into the other channels if they are not delivering volume. Timeline clause is also another going to be important thing to look at, and the way to walk away if you don't execute within a certain time frame. So if they don't really hold the end of the stick, you need to be able to have an opportunity to exit and exit clean. This way you're really not trapped into the partnership that drains your team's bandwidth for a little but no return. So this is going to be very important to really consider as you're starting to build this. Thinking about quality over quantity. Another misconception that is really happens in the lot of dozens of partnerships that we often observe. The reality really is that 2 or 3 high leverage partnership structured correctly can outperform 10 scattershot deals that just keep your ops team busy. You worked with the brands that timed down their partnership roster by half and actually increased revenue and margins. Why did this happen? Because the engine that they was spread thin across the 10 accounts was now focused nurturing and strategically supporting the 3 accounts. So thinking about the best partnerships you are not, set in or forget it. There are quarterly renegotiation that needs to happen. Bring fresh numbers, challenge assumptions, and revisit terms regularly. Most of our clients only renegotiated once every 2 to 3 years those contracts, which means that they've locked themselves into the outdated terms that don't reflect today's demand profile. So when we take over the account, that is number one thing is we revisit every structured deal to ensure that the terms are actually favorable to the brand. And that's super important. Thank you, Maria, for sending up your question. How do I avoid partnerships that look great on paper but end up draining my team? Maria, the key is really to calculate the total cost of partnership before you're signing. Don't just look at the wholesale discounts or margins. Add in account management hours, compliance cost, EDI, setup as an example, marketing commitments, even custom packaging requests. That often comes from, especially within the business of the large retail partnerships. When you add those up, you will see quickly whether the partnership is profitable or just a vanity placement. And if it doesn't add up, don't be afraid to walk away. The best deal is one that protects your team bandwidth and your bottom line. You don't need dozens of partnerships. 2 or 3 high leverage ones structured correctly can outperform 10 of those scattered deals that you're potentially doing. Thank you. I'm really glad that this was helpful. The other thing I want us to think about is logistics optimization and turning fulfillment into a profit lever. Most companies still treat logistics as a back office function, something that you set up once, sign a 3PL contract, and forget about it. That's an outdated thinking. And I will be surprised. I'm constantly surprised when our clients come in and you would think that they're so progressive, and we start to look at their logistics and we're seeing that they are very stale and outdated of how they were created in the first place. In today's omni-channel environment, logistics is not just an operational cost. It's one of the biggest profit levers you have. And yet, Most fashion businesses are stuck in rigid one-size-fits-all fulfillment models. Here's what I mean. For example, many brands lock into 3PL contracts that require bulk commitments. That's great and it sounds safe, but in reality, you're overpaying for slow-moving SKUs while starving your high-velocity ones. That creates cash flow bottlenecks, high carryover costs, and encompasses customers' experience. So, what will really work in this particular case? And how should we look at the logistics in the best way for our business? I always favor and big advocate for a hybrid fulfillment models. The smartest brands that really moving away from all eggs in one basket is that they split the fulfillment. Centralized 3PL handles slow movers where scale and efficiency matters. Where localized micro fulfillment centers manage your fast movers, bring them closer to the customer. This reduces the delivery times, lower shipping costs, and boosts conversion rates because let's face it, in today's market, 2-day delivery isn't a luxury anymore. It's a baseline expectation. The other thing to think about is potentially utilizing your suppliers as part of the fulfillment centers, especially for your wholesale orders and wholesale business. Instead of bringing it and product into 3PL and then dispersing it to all the stores' orders, if you do have an agile supply chain that can actually produce closer to demand in smaller quantities, specifically to your orders for the stores, they can break up those orders and actually ship them directly to the stores from their factory, bypassing the extra cost and time that will take for 3PL to receive it and then ship it out. So, thinking about those strategic movements, if you are fulfilling by Amazon all your Amazon orders, and you also potentially selling on TikTok or other channels, thinking about utilizing FBA fulfillment for both of those channels. That's an opportunity as well, as long as you are doing and have those items move fast, as long as they're not sitting in those fulfillment centers for too long. Thinking about the data-driven replenishment models. The old models we're considering about shipping pallets just in case, so that we would have extra that as the demand picks up. Well, the new model really needs to be shipped based on real-time sell-through velocity. This means that you're watching your channel data and adjusting fulfillment dynamically. For example, if your style is spiking up on Amazon, you move replenishment into FBA faster rather than wait for the wholesale POs to dictate the production. But again, you can't do that without agile supply chain. So this is where it needs to start. And really the payoff, the less dead stock you have, the fewer markdowns, more capital available for what's actually working, that you can reinvest and turn the product that actually works much quicker. Thinking also about packaging standardization. This is one of those hidden killers that no one really talks about. Inconsistent box sizing, poor DIM weight planning, and brand really teams insisting on oversized, unboxed experiences are quite like draining millions of dollars in some cases when we're looking under the hood with some of our clients. And standardized packaging program reduces shipping fees. It improves the warehouse efficiency and can even streamline returns. I've even seen brands recover 2 to 3 margin points just by auditing packaging specs. So instead of constantly thinking, how do we expand, we often have to say, how do we take a step back and see how we can optimize what we're currently doing? This is where we can be able to win some margin. Thinking about that, most of our clients think of logistic contracts as a locked in, but profiles changes consistently. What you really signed 18 months ago is probably outdated today. So audit your contracts at least every 12 months. We've helped brands share and save sometimes 15 to 20% in fulfillment costs but just renegotiating based on updated order volumes, SKU velocity profiles, and regional distribution shifts. And really make sure that you're always layering in an agility. This is where the real edge comes in. Ties your logistics strategies and your supply chain agility. If you're still producing on the 6 months bulk runs, your logistics is forced into inefficiency patterns. Overstocking, stockouts could potentially happen as well, and you're tying up cash that you could be reinvesting in your marketing and in your fast movers. When you shift more to the agile production, where you can support smaller runs, faster replenishment, pool-based models, your logistics finally become profit amplifiers, not a cost anchors. David, thank you so much for sending this question. Really, really great one. What is the most overlooked area where fashion brands lose money in logistics? Well, great question, David, right? Think about it. Honestly, it's packaging and dimensions weight. Everyone looks at freight rates, but they don't realize carriers charges by volume as much as weight. If your packaging isn't optimized, you literally paying a ship error. Another overlooked area is reverse logistics. Returns handling is often treated as a sunk cost, but with the right system, you can actually recover, refurbish, and resell a big portion of the inventory instead of writing it off. But it has to be done correctly, and it has to be thought through on the end-to-end process as you're looking for optimization. Let me share one of the case studies, and hopefully this really going to become familiar to some of you guys. And thank you so much, Venus. I appreciate you as well for your comment. I really appreciate it. Thinking about, when we worked with one of the mid-sized fashion brand that was convinced that D2C was their growth engine. They were spending heavily on digital ads, chasing retention, and pouring resources into content creation. On paper, it looked like a winning channel. But when we ran the numbers, it was a different story. Acquisition cost were outpacking lifetime value, returns were eating away at margins, and direct to consumer was really draining their cash flow as a channel. When we did the channel profitability audit, the real winner actually turned out to be the Amazon and wholesale for them. But here's the catch. The company wasn't set up to take full advantage of them because they thought of those as a sub channels that they are doing as an afterthought to their primary direct to consumer channel. Because their operations also were like a patchwork of disconnect systems. They were tied into a long production runs. They were chasing inventory that sat in the warehouses for 4 to 6 months before they turning. And that cash was locked, leaving them unable to double down on the channels that were actually profitable. Here's how we transformed it and what we end up doing to help them to win this game. First, we started off by optimizing their Amazon channel. We streamlined their product listings. We built a pricing architecture that really avoided channel conflicts. We redirected budgets from wasteful direct-to-consumer ads into Amazon DSP. That alone drove us 3.8 times ROS and cut return-related losses with packaging fixes. For wholesale, we also created a reset program for them. We renegotiated their top partners, introducing replenishment programs tied directly to POS sell-through by using a patchwork, where it's on-demand planning that's tied into agile manufacturing, and they can literally produce on demand within 14 days and 4 weeks from the time you place the order to the time the customer gets it. And that completely was a game changer for them. This eliminated the big buy and returned bigger, right? Cycled and improved wholesale margins by nearly 10 points. just thinking about those changes, they're not small changes, but unless you start making those incremental shifts, it's going to be very difficult to win this game in an environment that's constantly shifting. We also this took at really thinking about, instead of producing massive seasonal buys, we reshifted to on-demand pull-based model, at least for their testing in new styles, which meant freeing up millions of cash that been sitting and tied up in the inventory in the previous times in previous season, allowing the brand to reinvest directly into their high performing channels like Amazon and wholesale. The ROI on that capital was exponential compared to letting it just sit unsold as stock. And in the direct to consumer, we also pivoted as a brand equity and loyalty hub, not a scale channel. The pressure on the CSC disappeared, and the brand could nurture its most loyal customer while letting Amazon and wholesale carry the volume growth. They also be able to then convert Amazon clients into their loyal customers on direct onto their websites based on creating different type of merchandising and assortment strategies. What sold on Amazon really was an entry point to the customers to fall in love with the brand. And when sold on their website was more of a premium, best product that were people that would want to strive towards and get as they're getting more and more familiar with the brand, which helped to cover them higher margins on that end. The outcome overall, within 12 months, the brand achieved 25% lift in their total revenue, and more importantly, 30% improvement on their contribution margin. So, what can we learn from this example? That most omni-channel strategies collapse because they've built on a patchwork foundation. When you simplify and align channels with supply chain that supports agility, you stop bleeding profits and start compounding it. Sophia, thank you for your question. I appreciate it. How do you get leadership comfortable with moving away from traditional buy deep, hope to sell inventory model? Sophia, this is about showing them the opportunity cost. Every dollar tied in the inventory that may or may not sell is a dollar that you can't invest in proven high turning channels. By shifting an on demand or learn pool model, you're not just reducing risk, you're actually creating the fuel for growth. And once leadership sees the freed up cash directly funding high ROI, the resistance usually fades. And as long as you are able to show them how incrementally that you could be able to shift it without straining your existing teams and operations, by again identifying your groups of products that you actually be able to shift to those agile supply chain first, is I would say the testing products, the products you would typically test and bring quantities, but now you don't need to. The products that you are potentially new categories that you are testing in, and products that you are able to turn really fast for the particular wholesaler, as an example, that you are bringing in. Because if you brought an X amount against their PO and they sold through it half through the season and you cannot replenish it, that's it, you're done. Right? Where if with the proper supply chain and potentially shifting as hybrid model, going from a push to pull, pull to push, you are actually able to then optimize your turns. Great. I'm really glad this was helpful. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Another question that just came in, what's the hardest part of getting leadership team to align around this kind of changes? Thank you. I really appreciate the follow-up question. And really, it's about the mindset. Many leadership teams are, addicted to the top line growth matrix, and they celebrate the new wholesale deal without really asking, what does this mean to our margin? What does this mean to our stress on our existing operations? The shift comes when leadership agrees that profitable growth is the only growth worth scaling. Once that's clear, decisions get sharper and aligns followers, as long as you are able to back it up with the data and numbers. So we are trying to get to the top of our hour. So I want to just kind of summarize a little bit of what we have discovered and talked about today. And really, what we've covered is how to um, forensically evaluate each channel to uncover true profitability. The insider's playbook for building partnerships that actually scale your business. We talked about why logistics is a hidden profit lever, as most companies and brands overlook. And case study that I shared with you, really providing how these strategies can unlock both revenue growth and margin expansion. And really, the key takeaway here is that omni-channel isn't about you being everywhere. It's about being profitable where you choose to be. And that choice needs to be strategic to where you're trying to achieve at that particular year. Now that I want you to really think about your business. Which channels do you suspect is a silent draining margin? Which partnerships is more about the ego than a profit? And where is your logistics? Are you leaving money on the table or not? And where your logistics and supply chain is? Answering those questions honestly is going to be the first step towards building an omni-channel strategy that actually works for your business. Thank you so much for your time, for your questions. I will be looking forward to see more questions as people are going to be watching this recording. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Even if you don't have a question, you have ideas of a next topic you want us to cover, please do let us know. We're going to be very excited to have you guys to participate in this so we can deliver maximum value as we are delivering this live webinars. We do create this live webinars every month. We are going to have one more webinar this month in October 23rd. It's always at 10 a.m. on the Thursday of Pacific Standard Time. We are going to be talking about maximizing revenue through strategic licensing partnerships. It's a pressing topic for some of our clients, so we wanted to bring that and kind of discuss it and allow everyone else to be able to gain some knowledge there as well. If you are interested to know what our next topics are for a roundtable that we host as well every Tuesday of the month, and as well as the live events, do please follow us on LinkedIn on our page, Yushkova Design. We do publish there all of the upcoming events. If you can't make it to the event and you're registered, you definitely will get a recording. So we do encourage you to register. And hopefully, of course, leave us your comments and help us to know exactly if this is providing you with value. We also have a channel on YouTube where we share some of these recordings, but as well as other ideas and concepts that we'd love you to follow it as well and subscribe to Yay Designs YouTube channel so that you could be able to get all the latest and greatest tips. I really appreciate for everyone to be here, and I will see you next time.